Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our English Learning Podcast. I'm Jennifer, and as always, I'm here with my fantastic co-host, Elizabeth. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
Hi, Jennifer. I'm doing great, thank you. Today's topic is one that has sparked a lot of debate over the years, especially among parents, educators, and policymakers. Are violent video games appropriate entertainment for teenagers? Video games have become a massive part of teen culture, but there's still a lot of concern about the potential effects of violent content on young minds. We're going to explore both sides of this debate today and see if we can answer the question of whether violent video games are suitable for teenagers.
That's right, Elizabeth. Video games are more popular than ever, and while many of them are fun, creative, and even educational, there's a growing concern that violent video games could have negative effects on teenagers, such as promoting aggression, desensitization to violence, or even addiction. On the other hand, some people argue that these games are just a form of entertainment and that there's no clear evidence linking them to real-world violence. It's a complicated issue, and today, we'll break it down from different perspectives.
Exactly. And for our listeners out there, as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Do you think violent video games are appropriate for teenagers? Have you played these games yourself, or do you know someone who has? Share your opinions with us, and we might even feature them in a future episode. So, Jennifer, let's start with the arguments against violent video games. Why do some people believe that these games are not appropriate for teenagers?
Well, Elizabeth, one of the main concerns about violent video games is the potential for them to promote aggressive behavior in teenagers. Some researchers believe that when teenagers are exposed to violent content in games, they may become more desensitized to violence, and that could lead to an increase in aggressive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
That's such an important point, Jennifer. There have been several studies over the years suggesting that exposure to violent video games might have a short-term impact on aggression. For example, after playing a game that involves shooting or fighting, players might feel more aggressive or be more likely to engage in hostile behavior in certain situations.
Exactly. The concern is that by repeatedly engaging in violent actions in a virtual world, teenagers may begin to see violence as a normal or acceptable way to solve problems. Critics worry that this could have a long-term effect on their ability to empathize with others or understand the real-world consequences of violence.
Yes, and this idea of desensitization is key to the argument against violent video games. When teenagers are constantly exposed to graphic violence in video games, they may become less sensitive to violent acts in real life. Over time, they might start to see violent behavior as less shocking or more acceptable.
That's a great point, Elizabeth. And beyond desensitization, there's also concern about the addictive nature of video games, especially violent ones. Many violent games, particularly those with online multiplayer modes, are designed to keep players engaged for long periods of time. This can lead to excessive gaming, which can interfere with schoolwork, social interactions, and even sleep.
Yes, Jennifer. For some teenagers, violent video games can become a major distraction from their responsibilities, leading to problems at school and at home. In extreme cases, gaming addiction can cause serious issues such as social isolation, declining academic performance, and even physical health problems like lack of exercise or poor sleep habits.
Absolutely. And there's also the concern that violent video games can create a toxic online environment. Many popular violent games, like first-person shooters, have large online communities where players can communicate with each other through voice chat or messaging. Unfortunately, these environments can sometimes foster bullying, harassment, or toxic behavior, which can negatively impact teenagers' mental health.
That's such a great point, Jennifer. The anonymity of online gaming can sometimes lead to cyberbullying or other negative interactions, which can be harmful, especially for teenagers who are still developing their social and emotional skills. Being exposed to toxic behavior in these online communities can have a negative impact on their self-esteem and mental well-being.
Exactly, Elizabeth. So, those are some of the key concerns about violent video games: the potential for increased aggression, desensitization to violence, addiction, and exposure to toxic online environments. But of course, not everyone agrees that these games are harmful. Let's now talk about the arguments in favor of allowing teenagers to play violent video games. Why do some people believe that these games are appropriate for teens?
Well, Jennifer, one of the main arguments in favor of allowing teenagers to play violent video games is that they're simply a form of entertainment. Many people see video games as no different from movies, TV shows, or books that contain violent content. Just because a teenager enjoys playing a violent game doesn't necessarily mean they're going to become violent in real life.
That's such a great point, Elizabeth. A lot of research has shown that while violent video games might have a short-term impact on aggression, there's no clear evidence linking them to long-term violent behavior. Most teenagers who play these games are able to separate fiction from reality, and they understand that what happens in the game world is not acceptable in real life.
Exactly. For many teenagers, video games are a way to blow off steam or relieve stress. In fact, some people argue that violent video games can actually be a healthy outlet for aggression. Instead of expressing their anger or frustration in real life, teenagers can channel those feelings into the game where no real harm is done.
That's such an important point, Elizabeth. Video games can be a way for teenagers to release pent-up emotions in a safe and controlled environment. They might feel a sense of accomplishment or relief after playing a challenging game, and this could help them manage their emotions in a healthier way.
Yes, Jennifer. And beyond being an emotional outlet, video games can also help teenagers develop important cognitive and problem-solving skills. Many violent video games require players to think strategically, solve puzzles, and work as a team to achieve their goals. These are skills that can be useful in the real world, both in school and in future careers.
Exactly. While the violent content of some games might be a concern for some people, it's also true that many of these games require players to think critically and make quick decisions. Games that involve strategy, resource management, or teamwork can help develop important life skills, such as leadership, communication, and decision-making.
Yes, Jennifer. And another argument in favor of violent video games is that they provide a sense of social connection. Many teenagers play these games with their friends either in person or online, and it can be a way for them to bond and socialize. For teenagers who may struggle to make friends in real life, online gaming communities can provide a sense of belonging and companionship.
That's such an important point, Elizabeth. For many teenagers, video games are a way to stay connected with friends, especially in the age of online multiplayer games. Playing a game together can foster teamwork, collaboration, and even friendship, and it gives teens a shared experience that they can talk about and enjoy together.
Yes, and let's not forget that violent video games are often created with age ratings and content warnings in mind. Organizations like the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, provide ratings for video games to help parents and players understand what kind of content is in the game. Many people argue that as long as parents are aware of what their teenagers are playing and monitor their game time, violent video games can be part of a balanced entertainment diet.
Exactly, Elizabeth. The ESRB ratings are designed to help parents make informed decisions about the games their teenagers are playing. Games rated M for mature are intended for players 17 and older, and those rated T for teen are generally suitable for ages 13 and up. As long as parents are involved and keep an eye on what their teens are playing, they can make sure the games are appropriate.
Yes, Jennifer. So, from the perspective of those who support allowing teenagers to play violent video games, the key arguments are that these games are a form of entertainment. They can help relieve stress, develop cognitive skills, and foster social connections. And as long as parents are monitoring their teens' gaming habits, they can be part of a healthy entertainment mix. But, of course, this debate is not so simple, and it's often about finding the right balance.
Absolutely, Elizabeth. And speaking of finding balance, I think it's a great time to hear from one of our listeners. Let's take a call from someone who might have an interesting perspective on whether violent video games are appropriate for teenagers. Hi there, you're on the air with Jennifer and Elizabeth. What's your name, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Elizabeth. My name is James, and I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love today's topic. I wanted to share my experience as someone who grew up playing violent video games.
Hi, James. Thank you for calling in. We'd love to hear about your experience. Did you feel like violent video games had any impact on you growing up?
Well, I started playing games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto when I was around 13, and I can honestly say they didn't make me more aggressive or violent. For me, it was just a fun way to hang out with friends and relax after school. I never had any trouble separating what was happening in the game from real life. I think a lot of people overestimate the impact that violent games have on teenagers.
That's such an interesting perspective, James. It sounds like for you, playing violent games was more about entertainment and social connection than anything else. Do you think parents should be concerned about their teenagers playing these kinds of games?
I think it depends on the teenager. Some kids might be more affected by violent content, but for most of us, we understood that it was just a game. I do think parents should pay attention to what their kids are playing and how much time they're spending on it, but I don't think violent video games are inherently harmful. They're just another form of entertainment.
That's such a valuable insight, James. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having me. I love listening to your podcast, and I'm excited to hear more episodes.
Thanks so much for calling in, James. Take care.
Bye, James.
That was a great call from James. He really highlighted the fact that for many teenagers, violent video games are just a way to unwind and have fun with friends, and they don't necessarily lead to aggressive behavior.
Absolutely, Jennifer. And for those of you listening, if you're enjoying our podcast, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support really helps us keep creating these episodes and sharing more interesting topics with you.
So, where does that leave us in our discussion today? I think it's clear that the question of whether violent video games are appropriate for teenagers is complicated, and it depends on a number of factors. On one hand, there are valid concerns about the potential for increased aggression, desensitization to violence, addiction, and exposure to toxic online environments. On the other hand, many people argue that these games are a form of entertainment, and when played responsibly, they can provide an outlet for stress, foster social connections, and even help develop important cognitive skills.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right balance. Video games, like any form of media, should be consumed in moderation, and parents should be involved in monitoring what their teenagers are playing. Understanding the content of the games and making sure they're age-appropriate is key to ensuring that video games don't have a negative impact.
Absolutely, Elizabeth. The most important thing is to approach video games with awareness and moderation. For many teenagers, violent video games are just a way to have fun and connect with friends, but it's still important to keep an eye on how much time they're spending on games and whether it's affecting other areas of their lives.
Yes, Jennifer. So, are violent video games appropriate entertainment for teenagers? The answer isn't straightforward. It really depends on the individual teenager, the games they're playing, and how those games fit into their overall lifestyle. Parents, educators, and teenagers themselves all have a role to play in making sure that gaming is a positive and balanced part of their lives.
We hope today's discussion has given you some new insights into the pros and cons of violent video games and whether they're suitable for teenagers. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for listening. We're always here to share new insights and help you learn English while exploring interesting topics. Keep listening, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye for now, everyone. And remember, balance is key, whether you're talking about video games or anything else in life.